Hey, Redeem Mechanic here, and today we're going to be doing the evaporator on this 2010 Chrysler Town Country. So of course that's going to involve taking the dash out so we can get the HVAC box out of the vehicle. Alright, so first things first, let's get to the evacuation ports, or charging ports, whatever you want to call them. The high side port's tucked up underneath there, and I just pull the air box out of the way. It's just easier to go ahead and get that moved so that you don't struggle to get that one on. And then the low side port is up under there, easily accessed right on the firewall. So we're going to pull this out of the way and get the recovery machine hooked up. Let's take this bolt out here, or nut anyway. And we can pop this reservoir out of the way. All right. I opted for more space, so I'm going to pull this out too. Okay. Pop the tabs. Again, you can tell I'm having to do this one-handed because I don't have any type of cool GoPro or anything yet. I'll pull this out. Now this box pries up, and do yourself a favor when you get done, lube the little rubber grommets that these go into, because boy are they a pain to get out sometimes. A little bit of silicone lubricant goes a long way on these. See, just throw a little bit of grease on these. 1, 2, and there's a third one in there, I think. Anyway, yeah, the third one's on the box. There's your third piece. But yeah, just a little bit of grease helps a lot. Okay, so I've got my gauges hooked up. High side on my high side port, low side on my low side port, and we can see I definitely have pressure still in the system, so I'll need to recover that. A lot of times with evaporators it's going to be pretty much empty, but I just charged this up the other day during testing, and we left it in there for the customer so they could have AC for the few days it took to get everything situated and schedule the evaporator replacement. So now we're going to hook it up to my recovery machine and recover that freon into that tank right there so that it's safely stored. And then I personally, I don't have a recycling machine, so what I do is I recharge with completely new Freon, and eventually when that tank gets full, I take it to a friend's shop and they will recycle that for me so that it could be used again. But you don't want to just take it out and put it back in without running it through a recycling machine to get all the non-condensable gases out of it. So that's the way I do it. So while we're doing that, I'm going to disconnect the transmission shift control cable out here under the hood. The reason I'm going to do that is it's actually easier to disconnect it out here than to do it under the dash when we go to remove and pull the dash further back. So I took that little square tab, pulled it out of here, and then we're going to pinch these two little tabs in. See right, that one and that one? We're going to squeeze those in so we can release the cable from that bracket. Like this. Almost. There we go. All right. Pulled it out of park when I did that. So I'll need to chock the wheels. Good thing I have a flat floor. Safety third, they always say. Alright, so I'm going to pop that rod off right down in there with one of these little double finger deals. I don't know if you can see that or not. I can't see. Maybe you can. There we go. Alright, so now we're free, and we can free this from the bracket and kind of get it out of the way. So up here against the firewall. See where that cable's going into the firewall there? There's a soft boot that we'll have to kind of massage back into the firewall. And then we have the whole length of this cable where we can work the dash backwards and have the freedom of movement that we need without having to mess with the shifter assembly that's in, mounted inside the dash. You'll see when I get to the inside part. Okay, now let's start removing some plastic. You're gonna have to remove this piece so that you can get the dash out, and it's easier to do that if you remove this piece. So I always start here, pop these out, use one of these plastic wedges if you have one. If not, carefully do it with a screwdriver. Pop, pop, pop. Watch the dirt go flying. This one's, well, I might have to pull the seat out because this one's got this extra tray. Let's take a look in the back door and see if we can get it without doing that. Looks like there's a screw hole right there, so we'll see if we can't attach that. Now, this is why ordinarily people tell you, make sure you disconnect the battery. I pull as much plastic off without touching any wires before I disconnect the battery, and this is why. So I can move the seat back and forth, I can open the power doors, I can do all that stuff. As soon as I start touching wires, then we disconnect the battery. All right, so we just use a pocket screwdriver to take this piece off, and then we got a 10mm nut right there. Let's pull that out. Oh, no, I'm wrong. It's 11mm apparently. Trickery. Who uses 11mm? Anyway, there she's at. And let's see if this thing will just lift right out. Yep, sure will. So now I don't have to mess with that too much. I can take this out, lift, and twist. There she goes. I like to have multiple of these magnetic trays. What I usually do on an evaporator job is I'll have, one on the driver's side for all the fasteners I took off on the driver's side. I'll have another one on the passenger side for all the fasteners I take off on the passenger side, and then I'll have one that's outside, for the underhood screws. And then that way it's a little easier to keep track of everything. And when you have that, hey, where does this screw go? It narrows down your available options. I despise seeing people have fasteners left over when they're done. I think that's just criminal. If you take out, 37 fasteners, you should be able to reinstall 37 fasteners with no problem. Otherwise, just stop what you're doing. Anyway, that's my small little rant there. So the next thing we're going to take out is this kick panel right here. It just kind of pops out. And you can use a tool for it, but it's not really that hard. It's got two of those little clippies. Pops it right on out of there. All right, now we're going to take this side piece off. That one we probably should use a tool for. Get in there without scraping things. Actually, let's do this. Let's move this out of the way and then try it. There we go. And pop that out, and that gives us access to the dash bolts. Those we'll be taking out a little later. We're also going to go ahead and take this and just peel it back that far and kind of tuck it out of the way, because we're going to have to take that upper piece off too. So they're not paying me to say this, but I wish they would. So let them know. Anyway, have some tub of towels or something similar. I really like this brand. I think they work a lot better than others. So you want to get the grime off your hands before you start going and touching that, because you will leave a nice fingerprint there that's almost impossible to get out. So just get, even though you're not getting super dirty doing this, you do get grime, dirt, whatever on your hands. Take and wipe your hands off real good before you touch anywhere near the headliner, because those headliners just absorb fingerprints like you wouldn't believe. All right, so now you gotta pop this A-pillar trim out. I just reached over the top and pulled. You can use a tool to do that, or you can just use your fingers. Like, again, you're gonna leave marks if you don't clean up some. Then see how it pops out. It's got these, this thing here is the guide, and it's got a little popper there and there. And then it's got some straps that are in the way too. So you're gonna wanna carefully remove the little strap thing. Well, let me see if I can get my camera in here. Push that, like that. Get that out of the way. What those are there for is so that when your airbag blows on this vehicle, so this A-pillar doesn't come flying and hitting you in the face. These retain the thing and make it just move out of the way if you have an impact and this airbag deploys. So you want to just carefully move those off the thing like that. Okay, then you can just pull this on up out of there. All right, now we've gone into the negative pressure, so we can close this off. All right, close this. And we can shut off my recovery machine. There. Now we have recovered all the Freon. I can close the can. Close, 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 close. All right. Recovered. Now I can safely just go ahead and start taking this thing apart. All right, so next we're going to take these three little scrivets. I think that's what they're called, scrivets. They're a little rivet that will trick you into thinking that you can just unscrew them, which you can, but only if you use a tiny bit of just sideways twist. The minute you push, they're going to go back in. See? So don't, even though it looks like a Phillips head, use a small straight screwdriver and just catch the edges and walk it back. Then you can pull the little thing out. All right, let's take those three out. And now once that's out, you can just pop this side of the dash out, and we're gonna go over to the other side and do the same thing. All right, those are out, and we can walk that out. Now we'll try to get this little piece of plastic on out of here so we can see what we're doing. Okay, we've got a couple of connectors we'll need to disconnect in there. This is your cigarette lighter, and then that's your, looks like a low tire light, or I don't know, some other connector there. So, squeeze and pull. Find the magic spot for squeeze and pull. One more. I guess there's three. Squeeze and pull. The last one's on the bottom, the other two are on the side. All right, now we can take this out of here. Now you probably won't run across this, but this looks like this one's got a break on that piece there, and it's got a screw missing there. So it's really wobbly. I'm gonna see if I can take this drawer out on this dash so it doesn't break the rest of the way while we're wrestling the dash in and out. And then we'll figure out a way to secure that better when we're all done. So it looks like there's a screw up underneath, right there, in the black plastic. I don't see another one. So I'll take that loose and see if I can get this drawer assembly out, or cup holder assembly, or whatever it is. Yep, just that one screw. But this is what I was talking about earlier. Somebody's had this apart, they put it back together, and they left this screw out. And so this one was having to do all the work, and it broke. So just put all the screws back, people. Okay, so let's take out the trim on the passenger side now. Pop. Pop, pop, pop. There's that. Same thing with this. Give it a little encouragement. Pop, pop. All right. Now we'll take and pull this out of the way. And pop this one out. Pop, pop. There's that. Okay. We got our access to our screws again, and we're going to do the same thing with cleaning our hands. And then this side, we've got to actually take this little piece off. There's two, looks like two screw covers right there. 1, 2. So let's get a small screwdriver and take those out. All right. Carefully go under there. Yeah, looks like about probably a T30. And same thing here. All right, we'll get us a T30 and take those out. There's that. Woo! Well, that almost went bad. I'm used to them being stranded or trapped in there. This one, they're not. So use a magnet and get those out of the holes before you do what I just did. All right, but anyway, then we can lift it up and out. So at the base, you have this piece that slides in to that slot right there. So that's what you kind of want to pull it towards you, up and towards you at the same time. All right, so next you want to take the floor mat out of the way and anything else you have over on the floor on both sides. I'll be over there to do that in a minute, because there's a couple of screws down here at the bottom of this bracket. So we have to move the carpet out of the way. And you want to make sure, because very often you see this, where there's a little tiny, I don't know, a little tear, or maybe that's supposed to be there, but that will rip straight to here if you're not careful. So when you go to pull these carpets back, make sure you're free on as many sides as possible and just carefully bring it back. And see how this is stiff here? So you're gonna wanna, and it's gonna try to catch there. Bring it up careful, because these carpets will rip fast. I've seen many people rip their carpets here, and that's not good. So when we get under there, only take it back as far as you need to get your, free money to get your bolts out. And always put the coins back in the customer's cup holder so they can lose them again. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put those in our little tray. And pop this out. Got a little up there. Out she comes. All right, once you've got your carpet rolled up on both sides, you can carefully lift the center, and you'll be able to see that these ducts right here are held down on these little studs. You're gonna want to pop them up. Easier said than done. Where's my little pry thing? 1 second. All right, now we can see a little better. We want to get these pried up off of those studs. That gives us a wiggle room so we can try to disconnect them. And so when we go to pull the HVAC case out, we're not struggling with these floor vents. So pop those loose while you have the carpet released, and then try to wiggle them where they come out. See how it's got that slot there? So you want to pull it away from the slot and out. You can't do it one-handed, but you want to get it to come out of that slot so you can pull it this way, and then you can pull it down and take these two floor vents out. Not gonna lie, that was a little bit of a tight squeeze. So what I did is I brought this corner, after I separated it from here, I brought this corner as far over that way as I could, and I brought this down and towards me. And then it popped out. But yeah, it's a little bit of a struggle. It's all plastic. It does bend if you need it to. But that sure beats pulling the console and seats out. At this point, I don't think we're gonna need to do that. So that was the only thing I was concerned about is those underfloor vents. Because on some vehicles, you really have to gut the car to get these two things to come loose. On this one, it's not so bad. So I'm making this clip to insert in because I found out that it is easier to take the seats out. It's definitely much easier to wrestle these things with the carpet out of the way, completely out of the way. as we found out after we realized we had to take the seats out. All right, at this point we're going to start pulling dash parts. So we're going to want to disconnect the battery now. So take the negative battery cable, disconnect that, and don't just leave it there. See what happens? Beep, beep, beep. You got to tuck it out of the way so it's not going to come back up. Because, I mean, if this thing comes up and hits something while you're doing the wrong thing, you could still blow an airbag in your face. So just make sure it's secured out of the way so it can't reconnect with the battery. And then we're going to wait a little bit before we start disconnecting anything. All right, so the next thing we're going to be taking is this plastic cowl piece up right here. And these things tend to be really fragile, so you want to look and see if there's any spots that are already cracked, because you don't want to be prying where there's already a crack. You want to try to pry where you have the most meaty areas possible, even if that's, you know, a little further away from the fastener. But these things crack really easy, super easy. So just take a look at it and assess it. And this is the part that's super frustrating about being a mechanic. Look, it broke there, it broke there, and it broke here. And as cautious and gentle as you want to be, these things are just super fragile. I mean, to the point where they're dangerously fragile. Like if you got into a wreck, this stuff's coming apart and flying in your face. I've had it happen to me. But so now I'm gonna have to source a replacement for this panel, unless they don't care. But that looks terrible. Look at that. And literally using just fingers and popping in the thickest spots, and it's still broke in 4 places. They got to use better plastic on these cars, or maybe don't use plastic at all right there. But anyway, now I need to source them a new piece. So these things are held in with this, and you got to use, you know, you got to pull up in order to get these to release. Not a single one of these things released. They all snapped here instead because this plastic is so brittle. It's ridiculous. Look at that. Just junk. All right, so I went inside, had a sandwich, finished up pouting about cheap plastic, and looked for a replacement piece while I was eating. Found a used one on eBay since nobody anywhere had a new one. I did. So I got that coming, and now we're gonna continue on. We're gonna there's a bunch of these right here. We're gonna take them loose. I don't like to use power tools up here by the windshield, so we're gonna use just a hand ratchet with a nice long extension to stay as far away from that windshield as possible. These are, looks like 10mm bolts. I grabbed a 13, so I'm gonna go switch sockets. So what I like to do is put my hand over the top of the ratchet so it's not gonna come up and hit the windshield, and just loosen each one of these. Once it's loosened, you can come back in with a, you know, a little drill or whatever to bring them out the rest of the way. But these ones aren't as bad as some, but there's some vehicles where you got to put a lot of effort in when you first break them free. And if it breaks free the right way, the back of the ratchet or the head of the ratchet might run into the windshield, and you don't want that to happen. So yeah, looks like we've got about 7, 1, 2, 3, yeah, about 7 of those 10mm bolts up in the top there. Okay, so it was 6 10mm, and then there's 2 13mm right there. All right, so next thing we want to do is we want to take this bolt out right here for the steering column. But before we do that, we want to secure the wheel so that it doesn't spin. We don't want to ruin the clock spring in here. So what I like to do is I like to take a lashing strap, like one of these lashing straps, go through the wheel and through somewhere on the seat under here, like this bar will work good. And I'll lash the two together so that that wheel can't rotate. All right, let me show you. Okay, so it's through the wheel and around the seat. So no matter what happens, this wheel's not going to go any more than a little bit. It's not going to do a full rotation Therefore, it won't ruin the clock spring by being in the wrong position when it goes back together. All right, so you'll notice that I attached the steering wheel to there instead once I realized that we did have to pull the seats out. So it's the same idea, it's just a different anchor point. All right, broke the bolt free. And then we'll just lift this up. Easy peasy. Now we can pull the dash backwards. All right, now this is where we want to double check to make sure that cable is free, so that that we disconnected earlier under the hood. Want to make sure that the boot is where we can see here, the boot following this cable. Want to make sure that we're good to go for it coming through. All right, right there is where it comes through at. And since it's coming towards us, we want to pry this boot to come towards us. Just kind of work it around the firewall. It's hard to do this with the camera in the way, but just pry it up. There we go. See? Now when I pull on the dash, this will just float in. Don't want to get too crazy with it, but that's all we need, just for it to be loose enough to pull through. Now we can take our 6 side bolts loose. It's not going to go anywhere because it's got this hook right here, so it has to be actually lifted up before you can pull it out. So that's kind of nice for them to do that. It's easier to set it in place that way. Now let's hit the driver's side wiring. We have this big connector right here. You push in there. Of course, this one won't fight me. Push in that right there and lift. Okay, there we go. Then we're going to want to take this connector of the DLC and just detach it from the dash. You gotta push in on the sides like that. Sorry, my hand's in the way. So you push these little tabs in so you can take this out of the dash. Okay. That looks like it on this side. Let's go look at the other side. All right, and take your 3 bolts out. I already did it. And then let's look for disconnects over here. We've got, that's an antenna. Let's see. All right, so it's pull this and then separate it like that. That was easier than I thought it would be. And then we've got one of those where you push it and release it right there. So push it on that thing and go up. Disconnect like that. And anything else? I'm not seeing anything. This, that's that. All right, so far that's all I see. So I lowered the glove box by how you push the sides in and drop it down, and I can see that I've got a Christmas tree little connector there that I've got to disconnect for that harness. And then it looks like I probably should disconnect the HVAC box too, right there. So I'm not really sure, but I think that harness stays attached to the dash. Almost forgot. Got to disconnect these two. And there's that one over there. All right, and then on this side, you need to disconnect the emergency brake, or the hood release, excuse me. Forgot about that. It's 2 T20 screws, one there, one there. There's the restraint control module under here. It needs to be disconnected. It's going, wiring is going up. So that's gonna hang you up. Okay, so the HVAC box is mounted to the back of the dash instead of being mounted to the firewall. So we're going to need to take the evaporator expansion valve bolt loose now. Ordinarily I wait to do that until I've got the dash out of the way, but on this one I have to do it now. You'll also have to disconnect the heater hoses now. Alright, well, she's pulled back, and you're gonna have to pull the seats. I had to unbolt them and move them back and take the center console out, and I would suggest you do that before you start pulling the dash. I wish I'd have known it was one of these ones where it's mounted into the dash and not mounted to the firewall. I would have known I had to flip it over. There's no room to flip it over with the seats in it. So when I'm putting it back together, I'll probably edit this. You'll see me putting it back together, but I'll also show you, once I've got it back together, an easier way to take these seats out, and I'll just edit that into that section. All right, so before we take those front seats out, we want to stow the back seats into the stow and go. So that we have a place to put them. All right, so this center console, you take it out by pull the little trim piece out. Where'd it go? Right here. The little trim piece out here for the spare tire thingy. You pop that out of here, and then it just lifts up, and it literally just has a hook on the back that just hooks under there. You just pull it right on out. All right, so to remove the seat, you've got 4 bolts, or 4 studs coming through the firewall. Right, here's one right there. I'm on the passenger side, just below the passenger door sill. So you got one there, and then you got one there out in the open. Except for it's not out in the open. You had to drop the spare tire down, and you had to take the little shield that's above the spare tire down. It's got 2 of those Christmas trees, this thing here. All right, you don't have to you don't have to take the spare completely out. Just drop the thing down on the cable, leave it attached to the cable. Same thing for this shield. Drop the shield, just pop the 2 Christmas trees and let the shield fall on top of the spare for now, and then you can put it back up when you're done. But for the back inside bolt on both the driver's side and the passenger side, which is this one, and then over there, you've got to have that down. And then there's the, oh sorry, that's the front one. Anyway, one of them. And then you got another bolt that's inside this hole here, and then you got another bolt that's inside this hole right here. Right there. All right, or nut. They're all 21 millimeter. There's 4 per seat. It's basically the same. Sorry, it's basically the same on the other side. Loosen those up, and then you can tilt your seat back and disconnect your connectors on it. All right, so on the driver's side, you've got 1 bolt here just right underneath the door. There you go for the door. Straight under to this support web, there's 1 bolt. Then after you drop your spare down and this shield thing, you got another bolt there, nut there. I always say bolt, I don't know why. And then in this hole, you've got 1. And then up here in this hole, you've got 1. There's your full 4 nuts. You got your 21 millimeter nuts. You'll need to loosen those to get the seat out of the way. All right, on the driver's side, you got a bigger connector right here. Just disconnect that. All right, so now we're gonna separate the box from the dash. Start up here. We've got 2 of these. I can't see. Here it is. 1. And then another one over here. 2. Alright, so you got this cloth thing here, and you take it off. There's a couple screws in the back, and then there's a couple of kind of Christmas tree push pins in the front. We're low on light right now because my flashlight died. See that? Those, there's two of those. And I'm trying to look at my camera instead of looking at what I'm doing. There we go. Okay. So there's that. And then a couple of Christmas trees. Oh, Christmas tree. Oh, Christmas tree. I don't really like you very much. There was two of those. And get that out of the way. Now we have a bolt right there, 10 millimeter, and I'm sure there's another one somewhere. Okay, so like I was saying, it's easier to take the front seats out now that we know this. So what you do is you stow and go the two back seats, and then you take the two front seats. You don't have to disconnect the seat belts if you just unbolt them and push them where the back seats were. Then you can roll the dash over on its face. Make sure you put something down to where the radio controls aren't going to get scratched up. Then we already took that diffuser cover off, and then we took that one bolt out right here, right there. Okay, so it looks like there's another one way up in here. See it right there? We need to take that out, and there's probably another one over down here somewhere. We'll find it here in a minute. Yeah, there it is. Right. Sorry about that, guys. I moved. It goes right here. That's the third bolt. So we got that one. Then we have this one. We'll see where the bolt hole is right there. And then we had that first one over here. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Also, while you're here, I got sidetracked because I noticed something. Here is the transmission cable. Right here. Okay. Mine, on this one, it had popped out of this bracket, and that would have been a problem for me later to get back in. So make sure that's back into place. Kind of keep an eye on that during the pulling and reinstalling. Make sure it doesn't pop out any. That's the shifter control cable. All right, but I've got all the bolts loose. I think next I need to disconnect the some of the actuators. I don't know, they may all just come out with the box. We'll see. Probably not. We'll probably need to disconnect that main white harness right there. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like that goes back to the dashboard. So, oh, that's the one we disconnected before. Yay. All right, sweet. That's the one we disconnected through the glove box hole. All right, so I think maybe we're ready to lift this out of here, but I need 2 hands for that. Nope, there was one more bolt, and that is right here, which would be kind of the center console lower area. So I'm looking up at it. So that's like the bottom of the dash. Here's your floor vents that we disconnected. Right? That's the floor vents. That's the bracket that was sitting in front of the floor vents before we rolled the dash. And so this is the front face of that bracket. And there's the bolt, okay? All right, so we got the box out on a bench, and look at that nasty stuff coming out of the heater core. Yuck. But anyway, I'm gonna take this off. It had 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. They were 7 millimeter. Get that out of the way. Next, we're gonna take the expansion valve off. This is a E7 for this stud, and then it's a T. It's like a T25, I think. T25 for the bolts there. Pull that out. pull our foam off, try to keep it intact. Alright. So we're gonna move over to the side. We're gonna take this cover off right quick. Should be a couple of screws. They're not that size though, you know. Alright, so they're T20. There's one there and one there. Take that off. That's our heater core cover. I think we're going to talk to them about swapping this heater core out while we're in here. Although I think you can do that without having to pull the whole box, but we're right here. So I'm thinking we're going to recommend a new heater core. As disgusting as that fluid looks, it's full of junk. Alright, and so we slid that heater core out of there. You just kind of be gentle pulling it out. Alright, so going back to what is right now the top, which is I guess it's the bottom, but anyway, we're gonna pull this motor wire harness off, pull this one off, and we're gonna take loose these 3 screws here with that T20 we've been using. So now this is going to separate like this, and we can take this assembly. Oh, there's one more wire. Take this assembly out of the way. One more motor down here we got to disconnect. Same thing, it's got the little red tab. Come on, you can do it. There we go. There. All right. I think that's it. Oh, and we got a Christmas tree. Oh, no, just not a Christmas tree, but a little tab there. Okay. And that's free. And there's our evaporator core. Okay, so I pulled the blower motor out, 3 screws, and then I started taking screws along here. Forgot to film it, but you got screws all along there. We're gonna take this top half off so we can get the evaporator out. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, plus those 3 there. And then there's, you can see there's the one that's on the back side here that I still have to get. One there and one there that are on the other side. So 11 on this side, 3 on the other side, and a 3 for the motor. Alright, so there was one more. It was right here. And another one, hidden screw. So make that 4 that are on the opposite side. Okay? Then you can lift that shell off, and look at this nasty. Yuck. That's gross. And then there's where our dye was leaking out and getting rinsed out with water, but that's so gross. I didn't see a cabin filter on this thing. Weird. I'm amazed this thing doesn't have a cabin filter. One second. Let's look. Yeah, so that's pretty incredible to me that there's no cabin air filter on a 2010 vehicle. I mean, the technology's only been around for a couple of decades. Anyway. Yuck. So we're gonna get our new evaporator in there. I pulled this case off. We'll get that cleaned up. I don't think the new evaporator is gonna have this, and if we can make this fit and be, still usable, we want to use that and kind of seal the box as good as we can. So pass a dye light over it, kind of. I don't know if this will pick it up. See, you can see it kind of embedded in there, and then you see where it was kind of resting against there. It's not it wasn't a huge leak. At first it took almost a year for it to leak, and then we filled it up for her and it went down in about 6 weeks, so it was getting bigger. But we definitely see there is a leak in this case, in this evaporator core. Just it's not the pouring out like we usually see them, but it's definitely leaking. All right, so we got the new evaporator sunk in there with the foam in place, so it'll, you know, seal it around so you don't have airflow going around the evaporator, it just goes through it. And then we put this piece back on. That's off of the original one, and it came with a new stud, but the stud doesn't have a shoulder on it, so I'm probably going to just reuse the original stud and throw a little bit of anti-seize on there. But that stud, you know, for the evaporator, I like them when they have the little shoulder on it to, you know, seat properly. So I always order the sealing washer kit. It's an extra 10 bucks or something. Just because from what happened just now, the sealing washers that came with the evaporator didn't fit the evaporator. It was slightly too small, and it was deformed when I tried to push it on there. So I don't know, I don't understand why they don't test fit their own the one that they equip you with. But this one right here was just a tiny bit too small. That's the one that came with it, and when I pushed it on there, it was kind of warped, and that would have ended up causing a leak. So always test fit these things. Make sure they fit snugly, but they're not warped and they're not loose. All right, because you don't want to do this job again over a silly sealing washer. All right, get your box back together. I would have showed you doing that, but I needed 2 hands for it. And then just make sure everything's not gonna fall off the table. Then make sure that your grooves are all lining up real good all the way around the case before you start putting even the first screw in. So I got good. Everything is lining up perfectly. Also make sure you don't have any wires trapped in there, anything like that. Then start putting all your screws back in. Remember, it's 4 on the, what now is on the top. It was on the underside when we started this project. You got 4 on one side and 11 on the other, plus the blower motor. Okay, so we got our 1, 2, 3, 4 on the underside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, that was right. 4 plus 11, right? Okay, and now we'll do our screw count. We have 3 left for the top piece, 3 left for the blower motor, and 2 for the what? 2 for the heater core cover. All right, so we got them all. That's something I do. I just kind of stop and count. When you have that many dash screws, you want to stop before you get too far along. Also, you have this evaporator temp sensor that goes right in here. I think that was one of the things that I didn't show taking out. So it only goes in one way. It goes in like this. See, there's a little line on it that only lets it go a particular direction. So it goes like this, snaps in place, and then it's got this connector on there. Ta-da. Definitely don't want to forget that. Without that evaporator temperature sensor, it will show open, and it will not give you any AC. But look how shiny and clean everything is now. Isn't that so much better? I mean, that's worth it just there alone. That poor evaporator was only getting about half usage anyway. All right, so we're gonna put the blower motor back in and put the top piece back on. All right, so now when we put the air distribution assembly on, we've got these little feet, and they go in those little shoes right there. All right, they're in there. You just kind of put them in and hinge them on, like so, like that. Well, you see what I'm trying to do, but I can't do it with one hand. All right, so she'll sit down in the groove just like that. And then we've got those 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. All right, bolts are in. Plug in those 3 motors we unplugged earlier. 1, 2. Right there. And number 3 here. There it is. Where's my harness? Oh, it's hiding. There it is. Okay, so we got everything plugged back in. Get our harnesses kind of tucked back in the little holders so nothing gets pinched or cut. All right, now we're going to put that side cover back on over the heater core. But first, I'm going to see if they want to buy a new heater core while I got it out, or if they want me to just kind of run a hose through that one they had and put it back in. Okay, now we're ready to put the expansion valve back on. And as I've mentioned in other videos, as a matter of fact, I'll put a link, but sometimes these little things want to fall and drop in places that you don't want them to go. Even though we've got this box outside, if it drops down in there, you're not going to get it out with a magnet. You're going to be fishing for it, and it'll be a time and time again thing, because you've got to have this sitting here while you put the evaporator on, get it bounced in place, and then get the screws in. So to avoid frustration, get yourself. Now I'm using, because I've upgraded, I'm using a 5mm by 0.8 threaded rod, like so. I'm gonna put a link maybe at the end of this video or in the description of where I was doing expansion valve on a F-150, and I didn't have this threaded rod, so what I did is I actually made a piece of threaded rod using brake line and a tap and die set. But anyway, the purpose is the same. We just want to get this in here, and then we can use that to hold it in place, and we can slide the expansion valve over my line here, right? And that way this is not gonna go falling down inside, because it definitely wants to on this one. It wants to go falling. All right, 1 second. Okay, see, so now I can grab the top and hang on to the bottom, and if I had my other hand available, I can get all this wriggled together and put a screw in, and then I can take this threaded rod out. But it will save you time and effort if you plan ahead. There we go. We got everything locked in place now, and I can put a screw in. Just like so. Let's see if I can do that one-handed. Look at me go. Now that I've got this side threaded, it's not going anywhere, and I can take my threaded rod out and put the other bolt in. Okay, and then make sure you tighten these, back and forth slowly, so that it goes down and compresses evenly, and you don't have any, the sealing washers are compressed flat and not kind of one side or the other, because it can kind of rock if you tighten one side all the way down and then tighten the other. It can kind of squish them sideways. All right, now we'll put the little stud in the center. Like I said, I'm going to reuse the original stud because I like that shoulder. So this one here, I probably should I'm going to put some anti-seize on that real quick. Just a little tiny dab. Dang it! Happens every time. Ugh. Good thing I have my tub of tiles nearby. That could have been a disaster. All right, so we got this in there. And we'll use our E7 to tighten that up. And we'll put our foam piece back on. While we're thinking about sealing washers, let's go ahead and grab these ones off, because it's so much easier to get them now. Pull them off, measure them up, put new ones on, instead of having to fight with them from the outside. Much better. All right, so the verdict on the heater core was, unfortunately, nobody had one. We'd had to wait a couple of days to get one. And since it does not require removing this whole box again to get the heater core out, we're just gonna put it back together. I flushed it until it was clear, but I mean, I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and every time I'd put water in this side, it'd come rusty out that side, put water in this side, and come rusty out that side. I got it finally where it's coming clear out of both sides, but I'm sure there's still junk in there. It's just, it's hard to flush heater cores anymore, you know, thoroughly. Even tilt it, move it every which way, I still be willing to bet there's more junk in there. But it's better than it was, and if it does fail, we don't have to repeat all this labor. We can just go in there and wrestle it out from under the dash. So now we'll put that side cover back on. It's got 2 screws and it clips into place. Put this top vent back on with the 3 screws. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we set it back on there and we start putting it all back together. And if you're the type of person that stops your video at this point, everybody hates you. So let's remember where our bolts are. We had one there, one here, one down in there, and one over in there. So that was 4 bolts and on the bottom, the kind of a 10mm head, and then we had 2 7mm screws up top here for this. All right, so let's get those done. All right, so we got our 6 screws in. It took a little bit of wiggling and jiggling, so I would suggest put them all in loosely until you get them all lined up, and then you can tighten them all down. Otherwise it might be a little bit more of a hassle for you. All right, so now we're getting ready to roll this thing back into place and put it up on the firewall. So I'll have to get a helper give me a hand put this dash back in. So I'm waiting for somebody to come over and help me do that. But before you roll it in, don't forget, you've got to put that, feed that through the firewall, the shift cable. Otherwise that'll be problematic. We can put that little sound diffuser thing back on. That's our 2 little Christmas trees, one there, and then it's got 2 screws, one here and one here. All right, it's back up in there. We want to make sure that the cable that we were talking about before is going through correctly. I've already done that, but want to make sure that it's attached on this side especially, and then we'll come around on the outside. Throw it back in its little thing. We get a light on the subject. All right, so we'll take and snap that back in place, and then we'll snap the little lever back on. All right, there's that. Make sure it's all the way engaged. And then we'll snap it on here. Can't get my hand in there. All right, that required 2 hands. It was trying to murder me, but got it. Don't forget to put that little square pin retainer in there that we took out earlier. All right, so that's set. Let's go start putting some bolts in the dash. I think I'm gonna go ahead and set that to right in there and bolt it down, and then I'm gonna change the dryer real quick, and then we'll go back to working on the dash. That way I can have this thing in a vacuum while we're working on the rest of the dash. So in another mastery of engineering, they've made it to where this flops around and this flops around while you're trying to get everything centered. So once you think you have them lined up, put the bolt on and then slowly tighten while wriggling each pipe, because you don't want to smash one of these pipes. That would be a bad day. I don't know why they do things the way they do them. If it was a fixed position, we'd only be fighting 1 angle. Now we're fighting 3. So anyway, slowly And kind of wriggle, 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 wriggle. Make sure that everything's going in. We don't want anything to get bound up. All right, so there's that. You can put your heater hoses on now if you want. I'm gonna work on the dryer first. All right, so here's the dryer. I'm gonna disconnect the electrical. All right, and we've got 2 bolts up top. And I believe we got 2 bolts on the side for the brackets. And this one, I can get this out of the way. If I remember right, it's just going around. Yeah, this one's going to this clamp that goes around this pipe. So it's a little difficult to line up when you get done, when you're putting it back together. It's not terrible, but you know. All right, so it's a 13mm bolt back on the back side right here. Let me change hands. Right there. Okay. And then there was 2 8mm bolts right here, and this. There you got a 10mm right there. But you don't actually have to. You can just loosen it. You don't have to remove it, and then she'll come out of there. All right, pop your caps off. And put a little bit of oil in it, maybe 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces. Like I said earlier, it's a universal rule that the O-rings they supply you with are never, ever, ever the correct ones. That's the factory pad mount. That's what they try to send you. It happens every single time. So that is why you buy the complete O-ring kit, so you can hopefully have the correct O-ring. So tighten up these bolts first to get it ready to go. Then you can tighten up the mounting one down at the base and the little bracket one over here. All right, so now that we've got the accumulator / dryer installed, we're going to go ahead and rehook up the gauges and pull a vacuum on the system so we can boil out all the moisture that we've allowed to come into the system. Now on this vehicle, the low side sits high up, so it's not going to pull a whole lot of oil up with it if I put it in a vacuum through the low side. So I'm going to pull strictly on the low side for this one, so we don't pull out all the oil I just put into the system. Now we're going to put our column back in. Got it in there. We'll put our bolt in. We'll torque it down, and be good to go. All right, so we'll do our restraint control module. That's back in. This little harness goes up and over. So that's the way it's supposed to be. I just didn't want it to get cut pulling through, so I went ahead and tucked it around when I did it. All right, so there's that. Now we're gonna go over here. Need to find our harness and get that lined up, snapped in place. Take this one, snap it back in the dash. It just kind of pops in place. There we go. All right, now I need to put this back in place and put the screws in. That's the 2 torque spit T20s. It's kind of a pain because you have to hold the handle out of the way while you're putting the torque spits in, so I'll do that off camera. But there's 2 torque spits, one there and one there. All right, so under the dash, gotta reconnect this here. I've already done it, but that's your HVAC controls, and then you got that big harness. connect that one over here like that, and then we've got our antenna cable right here we need to do. I can't see what I'm doing here. All right, looks like, there we go. And then we've got these ones over here. Those two. Which, by the way, when I put it up, I tucked them in here so that the cables wouldn't drop behind the dash when I was putting it back in. That was really a nice little grabby thing so to hang on to it. I'm going to connect those two. Now we need to take this, reconnect our airbag on the driver's side. And make sure you put it back in this little clippy there. Now we can put our side bolts in, 1, 2, 3. Same thing for the other side. All right, passenger side, same thing, 1, 2, 3. And now we got to work on our top bolts. You got to remember we got the 10mm bolts, and there's 6 of them. 1, 2, 3 on this side, 1, 2, 3 on that side, and then there's 2 13mm bolts that are right above the steering wheel. All right, so it's the next morning, and we're still sitting in a vacuum. I left it in a vacuum overnight and shut it off, shut the vacuum pump off, and then just let it sit, and it has not risen in nearly 12 hours. So that's good. That tells me I don't have any leak. I don't have any leaks in what I did, and apparently I don't have any other leaks in the system. So always like to see that. If you can leave a vehicle sitting for a good long time in a vacuum, that's a great assurance that you don't have another leak. So let's get back to it. All right, so we've got all of our upper bolts in, the upper dash bolts. I hand tightened them, same method, so I don't run the risk of the ratchet slipping and causing windshield damage. Now I'm going to put that that broken piece back in for now. I do have a new one, or a new used one, ordered, but it won't be here in time for me to give the customer's vehicle back. So we'll put the other ugly one in for now, just so it reduces the glare off the windshield, because this would be very distracting to drive with it like that. And then when the new piece comes in, I'll take it to the customer's house and install it. So on that piece, you've got these tabs here. They kind of, this is the front. So see how it's kind of shaped? You would kind of slide it into the dash and then push it down onto the other pieces that are missing on this one, that are the pop things all along there. This one's just gonna slide in and basically sit there and probably rattle, unfortunately. But you would carefully pop each one of these things in. If you didn't break yours on the way out, you also run the risk of breaking it on the way in. Just be as careful as you can. Unfortunately, the amount of force needed is the amount of force needed. It's like I said, it's a dumb design, but just do your best. And if it breaks, don't kick yourself too bad, because it's probably just the plastic's too brittle. All right, now that's set back in there, and you can put the side pieces, the A-pillar trim back on. All right, so A-pillar trim, remember, we're getting the tab that's on the trim piece is trying to go into this slot and this slot. So aim it down in there. All right, you don't need to use force, but you do need to just kind of navigate carefully, and it'll snap into place. And then don't forget, we got to put these little straps back on that hold the trim from flying into somebody's face. Right here. There's one. 2. And 3. There we go. All right. Now I can pop this back in place, line up the little guide hole, this thing. So once that's lined up, you should be able to just snap it in place like that. And then do the same thing on the other side. I'm not sure if I mentioned this on the other one, but this doesn't have the little strap things because it's got the bolts that are holding it in place. So when this side thing deploys, I think it rips this open here because there's no risk of this one coming off. It's bolted down. So get it, same thing, line it up in the tabs, slide it in place, find your locating pin right there above my thumb, line that up, and then just snap it in like so, and then put your 2 T30 bolts back in it and put the cover plates back on. So right now is a perfect opportunity to do a little solid for your customer. Vacuum. That's a little better. I mean, it ain't a professional shampooing or anything, but at least it got all the random stuff up. Now that we got that carpet clean, we're going to roll it back so we can reinstall those ducts and reinstall the lower brackets. And since the seats are out of the way, it's going to be a little bit easier. We still need to be careful because we still have, I don't know why they put those as it's even on both sides, so I'm assuming that that's cut there deliberately, but boy will it tear there. So just be careful. Bring this thing back. Oh look, random junk under here. Okie dokie. All right, now we'll look at the other side and we'll roll this whole thing back. All right, so got that carpet rolled all the way back, and it'll make the chore of putting this together a lot easier. And look, more money to put back in their cup holder. All right, so we've got our brackets in and we've got our ducts in. We can roll this carpet back in place for the last time. Voila. Do some tucking on the other side and good to go. So you remember that cup holder assembly? It was missing a bolt on this side and it had a broken one, or they had broken off on this side. So I took the bolt from that side, put it over there, supported it, but I think it's still shaky. So I came up with this. I took one of these things, you know, cut it down and made this little bracket here that can loop over the edge of the shelf. Let me get my light better. Loop over the edge of the shelf like this, and then it'll kind of form a support. And I found a screw to put in there. It's not perfect, but it's better than what it had when it got here. So we're gonna give that a shot. All right, now that's in place, and it's pretty solid. I might take a Sharpie and make it black so it's not so noticeable, but either way, I think that's way better than when it got here. So no need for the Sharpie, because once we put this trim in place, it's gonna cover it up anyway. All right, so let's plug this in here, the 3 connectors. It's the one with the white cross piece is on top, one with the black cross piece is in the middle, and then the oddball is at the bottom. All right, there's that. Push it in place, push it in place. All right, and then we'll go get our scrivets to put over on each side. All right, back on the sides, we'll put in our next piece of trim there. Get it all lined up. There's that. And then we'll put in the kick plate. Make sure you get the carpet behind it. Push, push, easy peasy. And then we've got the door sill. All right, and then line the door sill up, bits, little things. Good to go. And then don't forget you have that 11mm nut back here. All right, there's that, and put the cover plate back on. Now we can put the trim in, or the weather strip, whatever you want to call it. I guess this is more of a weather strip. Just roll it into place. All right, there she is. All right, same with this side. Side pocket on, and then start rolling this on. Up, 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 up. All right, good to go. Snap the kick plate in place, and oop, that's the wrong way. There we go. All right, good to go. All right, so the next thing is put that center console back in place. It just kind of slips under here and then lines up with the spare tire dropper thing, which you'll need to deal with soon enough. All right, so now let's put the seats back in. Put the studs through the holes in the floor, and make sure you plug your connector back in. Once you got the seat dropped in the holes, you'll probably want to thread one of these bolts right away. The one that's right by the door sill there. They're nuts. Put that one in so the seat's not rocking back on you while you're trying to do it. And so there's one, the one that's buried by the spare, which is right there. Right there. Then you got the one that's in the hole right there. Where did it go? There it goes. In that hole. And then you've got the one that's in this hole. Put it in there. Let me get a flashlight in there. Right there. Okay. So that's the 4 for the passenger side. And tighten those down. Nut attached so the seat doesn't rock. You've got the one there. That's where the spare will block it. And then you have the one in this hole right here. Right? And then you got the one that's in this hole right here. Right? And you get those installed and tightened. And this seat's back in. Okay, so let's put our center console back in place. Put the hook. Get it underneath there. Put the metal bracket in first. Like that. And this right over the top. Alright, that's back in place. Alright, now that we've got all of our electronics back in order, we can hook that back up, let it bark its angry bark at us, and tighten her up with a 10mm. My ratchet nearby. Yes, I guess. Oh, that's an 11. Well, I'll tighten it up All right, now just take a rag and kind of wipe down where you've been. Try to get stuff like that out, right? These wet wipe things are great. Not wet wipe, tub of towel things are great for that too. Just kind of, if you can make it cleaner than when you started, that's even better. Look at that. I don't think those are for me, but look at that, it comes right off. Just little stuff like that. This wheel's kind of gummy, but we'll carefully wipe it. I'm pretty sure this wheel is on its way out. It's got that gooey, sticky feel to it that they get when they get old. But I'll probably take some of the stuff off. We'll do the same thing over there. But yeah, just little things like that are always nice. All right, so our system's in a vacuum still, and we've hooked up our new Freon and our scale. And what we're gonna do now is purge this real quick. Okay. Just wanna make sure that we don't have any air in that line. We know the other hose sets are still in a vacuum, but this one wasn't. So now we're going to close this valve. Right, I've got the quick close there. Close this valve. Open this one. Open this one. Open this one. Open this one. Now we have to fill our hoses up with Freon the whole way around, right? So we can take a reading here on our weight. So we've got 10.65 pounds. And 2.53 pounds is our charging weight. So 10.65 minus 2.53 is approximately 8.15. So that's what we want to look for. We want to get it down to about 8.1 to 8.15 on our charge weight. Now we'll open up the low side, and we'll open up the low side over here, and we'll watch it go. Now I'm in Florida, so the bulk of the charge will just go straight in. I don't have to start the vehicle for it. Alright, it's pretty much stopped there, so we'll start the car up and get the rest in. When I do that is I just go ahead and close it again, and then I'll start the vehicle, let it get up to operating pressures and everything, and then I'll open it back up for that last little bit. Alright, so now that it's running, we will carefully open up our low side. We got to pull that last little bit in. All right. Now close the main valve here. Close this one. Close this one. Now we can open up the ones there. Open this one back up. And take a look at our pressures. They're looking pretty good. It's very hot and humid today, so a 40 psi low side, just about right. Exit pipe's nice and cold. It's always a good sign things are working properly. And we got warm going in and cold coming out. So that tells us our system is functioning properly. So we're looking good. Alright, so put the box back in, drop it on all its little pegs. You know, remember what I said about lubing them, makes it a lot easier for the next time. And then we'll put our top piece on, we'll plug our air intake temperature sensor in, and then we'll have to clear the code that we set from having that unplugged while it was running. But that's not a big deal. This connector right here, that's your intake temperature sensor. Put your boot back on. In the meantime, I've got it running and burping so that it can refill the heater core. And it's blowing nice and cold. And that is basically the complete job at this point. I hope that was good for you guys. Alright, so it's nearly 90 degrees inside my shop right now. That's the top number. And that's the number coming out of the dash vent, 45.9. So that's well over 40 degrees of drop in temperature. That's fantastic. And it's humid today too, and it's still going down. Look at that. So that thing's blowing great now. Now we're cruising down the road. It's floating between 47 and 44, up and down as the compressor's adjusting. It'll only let you get so cold before it'll kind of raise it back up some. That's good vent temps.